In this video, we're going to talk about writing equations of medians and altitudes. So some of it you're going to see, it's going to seem similar, but some will be new. This one will probably be a little bit longer of a video, but make sure you listen to the very end and you can earn a bonus point for listening for something at the very end. So the first part on here, if you see that this is just all of our information on how to write equations of medians, so make sure that you highlight and remember this. I'm going to refer back to this a couple times. So medians, remember, connect the midpoint from the opposite side to the vertex. So first we're going to have to find that midpoint of the opposite side, then we're going to have to find the slope between that vertex and the midpoint, and then we're going to use that slope and the midpoint, or the vertex really, to put it into our equation right here. Sometimes you can solve for y, but most of the time we're going to stop after step 3. Alright, so first we need to find the midpoint between our points A and B. So first I'm going to go through on my triangle and write down my coordinates. So we need to find the midpoint of A, B. So remember, midpoint, we add the x's together, divide by 2. And we add the y's together, and we divide by 2. So that's what I have right here in red. So the first one I end up with a 2 over 2. The second coordinate I end up with a negative 4 over 2. And that means it's at 1, negative 2. So when I plot that coordinate on my graph, I end up right around there. I'm going to do a couple dots so you can see where it's at. So there is my midpoint D. Alright, so next I want you to do the next two midpoints. So find the midpoint of BC, and I want you to find the midpoint of AC. Alright, so your midpoint, sorry, again, my dog, the midpoint of BC over here, so point E should be 6, 1. For the coordinate of F over here, of side AB, or AC, sorry, should be 0, 2, 0, 2. So next you have to find the slope of AE, so if I connect that with my blue, so AE, if I want to find the slope of those two, then I need to use the vertex A, and I need to use my point 6, 1 over there. So my setup would be a negative 1 minus 1. On the bottom would be my negative 5 minus 6. This would give me a negative 2 on top over a negative 11, so that would be a positive 2 over 11 would be my slope of that blue line. So now I want you to do the same thing for BF, so connecting B to F together, so that would be in green. And then also you need to find CD, so it would be in red, so connecting the vertex to the midpoint together. Alright, so your slope of BF, so that's my green one on there, is 5 over negative 7. Next would be my slope of my red line, so CD, you should get a positive 7 over 4. So on this last step, I want you to find the equation of the median, and there's only one median we're going to find on this one. It's going to be starting at vertex A, so that's with my blue line on there. So my vertex is at negative 5, negative 1. And we need to use the midpoint of BC, so we might point E over here, 6, 1. And we need to use the slope between those two, so the slope of that line, which was this 2 over 11 right here. So we're putting it into point slope form. And then with slope is still my 2 over 11. And then my y value, since it's a negative 5, it should be a plus 5 in my parentheses. So that's one of the setups. The other one would be a y minus 1 from over here with the 6, 1. My slope is still the 2 over 11. And the x value would end up being a 6. So there's two different answers you could have, and either one of those would be fine. On this problem, I want you to try out all of the steps all by yourself. Remember, you can color code if you want, like I did. So first find the midpoint of AB, then find the midpoint of BC, and so forth, all the way down to the equation of the median, going through vertex A again. So go ahead and push pause, work them all out, and then when you're ready to check your answers, then go ahead, push play. The first answer you should get for the midpoint is negative 1, positive 3, and I showed it on my graph already, along with the original vertices. Your midpoint of point E should be a 3, 1. On the last coordinate, so the midpoint of AC for point F is at 1, negative 1. One thing you might have noticed for the slopes is the blue lines, the one connecting my A and E together, so this very first one, that my slope is 0 because it's a horizontal line. The slope of the green line for BF, so connecting B to F, is a vertical line, so our slope should be undefined. So those are less work that you have to use to solve those problems. For the very last line, so my red line on there, your slope should end up being a -1. And so for the equation of the median, and we're starting at vertex A, so my picture is right here, so vertex A to my midpoint on the other side, and using my slope right here, those are the three parts that we need to write this equation. So one equation would be y minus 1, so from right here, and then equals my 0, my slope, and then x minus 3. So that was using my vertex, or not my vertex, my midpoint E. So if I wanted to use my vertex instead, my equation would be a y minus 1 again, but that's because I also have my y value as 1 right here, equals my slope of 0, and then in parentheses x minus -3, so it becomes a plus 3. And those would be my two possibilities of my equation for the median going through vertex A. So this next one is the exact same thing, except we have a different picture, and now it's not step by step, so we have to think back what are the main pieces that we need. So first, let's write down what the coordinates are of points A, B, and C. Remember, for median, it connects the vertex to the midpoint, so we need the midpoint of the opposite side. So in this case, since our vertex A, that is the one that we're starting from, the opposite side would be BC. The two coordinates that we would need then would be the -2, +3 for point B, and for point C is 0, -3. So go ahead and find the midpoint between those two coordinates. Remember, you add your x's, divide by 2, then add the y's and divide by 2. This is what mine looks like when I set up my midpoint. So we end up with a -2/2 and a 0/2. This simplifies down to a -1, 0. If you notice, I've been putting all of my coordinates I find into my picture, because then it's a little bit easier to see which coordinates I need to be using, because I don't have to look back and forth so much. Okay, so we found the midpoint of that side. I connected it, as you saw right here. So I need to put it into point slope form. I have a point because I have my midpoint, or I could use my vertex, but I also need the slope, so I need to find the slope between those two underlying coordinates. So I would like you to now find the slope between those two coordinates. So remember, slope is y minus y over x minus x. All right, so on top we should have -1 minus 0. On the bottom should be -7 minus -1. So this gives us a -1 over, let's see, -7 minus a -1 is +1, so we should have a -6. So our slope would be a positive 1/6. So now we need to take this slope and one of those underlined red coordinates and put it into point slope form. If we use our midpoint coordinate, we would have a 0 and a +1 right there. If we use the vertex coordinate, we would have a +1 and then a +7. And on both of those, we'd have our slope of our 1/6. So these are the two answer choices that you could put for the median of starting at vertex A. So what you've probably already figured out is that on this one you need to do it by yourself, and it's the same triangle, except this time we are starting at vertex C, so be careful of which coordinates you are using. So go ahead, push pause, and work out your solution. Alright, so your midpoint of side AB should be at -4.51. The slope then, connecting that point to point C, you get -8/9. So now if we would use the slope and our midpoint, our equation would be y minus 1 equals -8/9, and then x plus 4.5, because it's a -4.5 up here. So then if we would have chosen the vertex instead, this is what our equation would look like. Y plus 3, because it's a -3, and then equals your -8/9, parentheses x minus 0. So these are the different choices that you could have had depending on which coordinate you use, if it was the midpoint or the vertex. For the altitude, sorry if you hear that in the background, that's my dog eating her food and she refuses to move someplace else. And if you can imagine this, she only eats on the carpet, so she's running back and forth between grabbing her food to the living room for the carpet and then running back. So she'll get louder and quieter. So anyways, for altitude, we're going to write the equations, and we have to remember that altitude connects the vertex to 90 degrees on the opposite side. So we know we have to find the slope of something, but we have to find the slope of the opposite side first, because then we know it's perpendicular to that opposite side. So find the slope of the opposite side, then find the perpendicular slope, so adjust the slope. So remember, you have to flip the fraction and change the sign. And then once we do that, then we can use that perpendicular slope and the vertex that it's going through to put it into point slope form. All right, finding the altitude is a little bit faster than find the median, just because there's less we have to find. So first we need to write down our coordinates again. For the slope of AB, remember slope, we subtract our y's and then subtract our x's on the bottom. When I do this, I get negative 1/6. So remember, we have to do two things: change the sign. So now our perpendicular slope is now positive instead, and I need to flip it. So now it's going to be a 6/1. So really, I would just write a positive 6. 6 would be my perpendicular slope. So now I want you to find the slope of side BC, and then find the perpendicular slope of side BC, and then find the slope of AC, and do the same thing for the perpendicular slope, and then push play when you're ready to check your answer. All right, so your slope of BC should end up being a negative 4. So that means our perpendicular slope would be a positive 1/4. For the slope of AC, you should have a positive 3/5, and then your perpendicular slope would be a negative 5/3. All right, so the part that we want to do is we want to use vertex A, and it is going to be going through BC, so we are going to be using our blue number up here. So our perpendicular slope of positive 1/4, and it's going to be starting at my point A up here. All right, so the y value of that coordinate is a negative 1, so that means that it will be a +1 in our equation. Next, we have our slope is 1/4. And lastly, we have our x value is a negative 5 of the vertex, so now it will be a +5 in the equation. In altitude, there's only one equation for the altitude. The median, there's two different versions of it because there's two coordinates you have to find, or it could use that it goes through. For the altitude, there's only one version you should have, because you're always going to use the vertex as one of the coordinates and the perpendicular slope as the other, and those are your only choices. So on this one, I want you to try working it out, and if you notice, this triangle is the same one we had used before, so the three coordinates are 1, 5, 5, -3, and -3, 1. All right, so when you work it out, your slope of AB should end up being a positive 1. This means even when we flip it and change the sign, our perpendicular slope will be a negative 1. For the slope of BC then, we should end up with a negative 2. So the perpendicular slope would be a positive 1/2. For the last one will be a negative 1/2. And then the perpendicular slope would be a positive 2. Okay, so for your equation, you have to find, you're starting at vertex A, so -3, 1, and you need to look at which side, which is opposite, which is BC again, so that's our blue line. So we're going to be paying attention to our perpendicular slope of the positive 1/2, and then our vertex of the -3, 1, as the numbers we're going to substitute into point slope form. And then the x value will end up being a +3. And remember, again, this is the only equation you could write for the altitude of the line that's going through vertex A. So this one, again, I'm going to walk you through, and then the next one you're going to do all on your own, and this is more similar what it will look like for your test. Remember, there's only one more problem after this, so then I'll give you your answer for the bonus. You can write down your notes, and you can get some bonus points towards our next test. So with this one for the vertex going through C, we need to write the equation of the altitude. So remember, altitude goes through the opposite side, so the opposite side of point C is side AB, and we need to find the slope of that side so that we can find out the perpendicular slope. So go ahead, push pause, work out your answer for the slope, and then when you're ready to check your answer for the slope of side AB, you can push play. All right, so this is what your work should look like for the slope of AB. So the slope of side AB is 4 over 5. So now we need to do the perpendicular slope of side AB. So remember, we need to flip it. So now it's going to be 5 over 4, plus we need to change the sign. So now it's going to be a negative 5 over 4. So this is the slope we need to use in our equation. And then the other point we need to use is going to be the vertex that it's going through. So our point C. So 0, negative 3. So go ahead, take those numbers, and now write your equation into point slope form. And when you're ready to check your answer, go ahead, push play. All right, so because our y value is a -3, this should be a +3 in the equation. Our slope for the perpendicular slope is a negative 5 over 4, and then the x value is our 0. So this is what our equation should be for the altitude going through point C to the opposite side. On this one, I want you to work it out all by yourself again, and here are the coordinates to start off with. If you notice, you're starting with the same triangle, but you are finding the altitude going through vertex B. So up here at -2, +3. So go ahead and find the slope of the opposite side, then the perpendicular slope, and then write the equation of your line. So your slope of AC should end up being a 2 over -7. So this means that the perpendicular slope will be a +7 over 2. So when we take our vertex coordinate of vertex B, so make sure we read the directions to find out what vertex you're starting at. So vertex B, that our 3 should go here, and our +2 would be for the x's. And then my slope, my perpendicular slope, my 7 over 2 then goes in front, and that would be your equation of the altitude. All right, so here is your bonus. I'm not going to write it, so it's only for those of you that are listening all the way to the end. And this is a little piece of tidbit of information. Did you know that there is a Mount Douglas, and it is in Alaska, and the altitude, since we're talking about altitude, the altitude of this mountain is 7,021 feet. So if you write that on your paper and you show it to me when you're showing me your notes tomorrow, then you may earn some bonus points. So the altitude is 7,021 feet, and it's called Mount Douglas.